Hey, how are you?
Hey Anthony, how you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Thank you
Good.
for joining us on this podcast,
No
OPSM.
problem.
So quickly, I'll do an introductory. On the left-hand screen, we have Jesse Falenga, who's our OPSM representative. And then at the bottom of the screen, we have Anthony Pulis, who is now the assistant coach at Inter Miami. So thank you for being on the show.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Anthony, I guess I'll start the podcast. So in our program or in our agency, we have a lot of young players. And so we're going to direct some of the questioning towards towards keeping them motivated and things like that. So I'm hoping some of the questions, you can touch on some questions that help them with their mentality and things like that moving forward in football.
Yeah.
So, we'll start off. So for those who don't know, Anthony is obviously the son of Tony Pulis, a famous Premier League manager, of course. And so, Anthony, my question for you is, being raised in a professional footballer's home as a young man, what was that like in terms of the pressure to excel in football, if there was any?
No, I don't think there was ever any pressure to excel in football. I mean, I was very fortunate and very privileged to be around professional football from a young age. I mean, I was always around my dad when he was early into his management career at clubs like Bournemouth and Gillingham. I mean, school holidays, I would go with him and would be around the club and the training ground and in the offices, and I loved football. It was never forced upon me, but I loved the game. I loved being around it. I loved the experience of seeing what it was like in a professional environment. So, like I said, I'm very fortunate and privileged to have grown up in a football family, but it was never forced upon me. Obviously, once I got to probably 12, 13, I kind of knew that I wanted to be a professional. And then the great thing was I was able to get fantastic advice and things, that little nuggets that help you go through some good times, some not so good times. And obviously having my dad close by that's been around it and experienced it was a big help. And then I knew at some point, obviously I was fortunate enough to be a professional, played in England and then obviously moved out to the States, but I knew I wanted to go into coaching. I mean, my mum and dad made sure that I worked hard in school and I did fairly well and got some decent qualifications, but just I think being around football so much as a young boy, it was really all I ever knew. So it was a dream of mine to be a professional player. But then I knew once I did finish playing that I really wanted to coach. And as I said, going back to the early days of when my dad first kind of got into coaching and management, again, being around that side of it, it was something that I knew I would want to do. And then obviously as you get older, I've played under different coaches, different managers, experienced different teams, different styles. And then obviously now being a coach, I'm able to kind of try and mold all the styles and the personalities, so to speak, of the different coaches and teams that I've been around into what I would call as my own way of doing things. I mean, there's a lot of the values and the morals and the principles that my dad and my mum kind of put into me and my sisters as kids, and I try and live by those as a coach. But then obviously the way that I work and ideas on the game, obviously it's constantly evolving.
Go ahead, go on.
So going back to your early days, I know that you were in England and what was being able to sign that first professional contract? How was that for you in that whole transition?
Yeah, it was a special moment. So I was my first club was Portsmouth. So I signed full time. At the time, it was called a scholarship, a youth scholarship. So in the UK, you leave school at 16, and then you sign if you're fortunate enough to be offered a youth scholarship, you get generally it's a 2-year youth scholarship, and then at the end of that 2-year scholarship, the club decide whether they want to sign you on a full-time professional contract or whether you get released. And I was fortunate enough at the end of that 2 years to get offered a professional contract. Harry Redknapp was the manager at the time, and Harry's obviously had a fantastic career as a manager. So that was a special moment. And I remember one of the coaches at the club said, "What you've done is the easy part. Now's the tough part, is to really establish yourself as a professional." And at the time, that it kind of I remember raising my eyebrows, thinking, "Well, I've just worked all my life to get this professional contract. Surely that's the hard bit done." But now looking back, he was right, because it's a dog eat dog profession. It's a very difficult profession. There's so many ups and downs, and the biggest thing, or the biggest piece of advice that I now try and give young players is the importance of being strong mentally.
Yeah,
because everybody can enjoy things, enjoy their football, enjoy their training when things are going well, when you're in the starting 11 and you're playing well, and when you're winning. But let's be realistic. How long and how often does that actually last? Unless you're at the real top level, and even then, there's ups and downs. You're constantly trying to battle a yo-yo of emotions, and there's injuries, there's not being selected, there's being in the team and not playing well, there's being in the team and losing. And how do you deal with those negative thoughts? And it's something I feel really strongly about now, is the psychology side of it. I think it's such an important piece. I think a lot of emphasis is on the technical and the tactical and the physical, rightly so, but I don't think there's enough on the psychology side. And now going into coaching, I try and really spend a lot of time with the players, talking to them, just to get an idea of where they're at mentally, and to really delve deeper and find out about them as people, and how can you help them be a better person as well as a better footballer.
Yeah, I think that's good, Anthony. To continue to touch base on the mental aspect of the game, being a professional, starting your career at Portsmouth, what would you say what you've learned then that you would say now mentally that you would tell young athletes? What are like some regimes that they can do? Because obviously playing at a big stage that you did, dealing with fans, dealing with consistency of play, dealing with, being able to play at a high level consistently day in and day out every weekend, it's daunting sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, look, again, I think to get into a professional club system shows that you've got some talent, right? You've got some ability, because you wouldn't be there. You wouldn't be in the building. You wouldn't be in that organization if you didn't have some sort of talent and some level of ability.
Mm-hmm.
For me, then the next step again is it's your mindset, it's your attitude, it's your work ethic, it's the standards that you set. I think when I look back, I think there were occasions when I was maybe too worried about what other players were doing. So we had a couple of guys in our age group that got into the first team at 17. And I spent far too much of my energy worrying about, well, why are they getting an opportunity to play in the first team and I'm not?
Yeah.
And looking back, I wish that they were physically bigger and stronger than what I was. I was never going to be ready to play in the first team at 17, but they were already men by that age. But at the time, I didn't see it. It was like, well, why are they getting a chance and I'm not? And I wasted so much energy worrying about what the other players were doing instead of just focusing on myself. And really, and something I preach now to the players is be the very best you can be every day. And then tomorrow, be better than what you were yesterday. Mm-hmm. And constantly making sure, look, at the end of the day, you football's, it's a tricky one because you're in a team, it's a team sport, right? So you're in a team environment. So when you step out there in a team of 11 players, you're out there to do a job for the team. But as younger players, especially in the developmental stage, they have to, it's almost like a you versus yourself mentality. It's making sure that you're being the best version of yourself every day and asking yourself questions of what can I do to become better in each aspect. Physically, can I get in the gym more to build my strength? Can I do some extra agility work to improve that part of my game? If it's technical things, maybe somebody's really, really good with their right foot, but not as good with the left foot. So maybe they spend a little bit more time working on their left foot or their first touch or the angle of support. And there's so many different nuances of the game that they can improve on. Tactically, their understanding of space and which side to mark for defenders and 1v1, little things like that. But then the mental side of it, again, how it's almost understanding trying to have that single-mindedness and almost like a tunnel vision of being really driven and really focused on, look, I might not get selected in the next game, or something might get thrown in my way, an obstacle, but I'm going to find a way to jump over that obstacle, or to avoid that little piece of adversity that someone might throw at me, because you've almost got that vision and you're that driven and that focused on the end goal, which is to be the best player you can possibly be. And look, there's some young players out there that are going to go on and play at the highest level. Some might make it as professionals, but might not play at the highest level. Mm-hmm. But there's still, I've had this conversation with a number of the players that I've coached in the USL over the last few years, and rightly so. A lot of them have got ambitions to play in the MLS and to play in high leagues in Europe. But realistically, some of them are not going to do that. Some of them are going to play the whole of their career in USL. But there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. As long as they're improving and they're challenging themselves every single day to be the best, that's all you can do. Yeah. You can only be the best you can be. Mm-hmm. And some people's ceilings are lower than others, but that's fine. You can still go on and have a good career in the lower leagues, whether it be USL or it might be, for example, in the UK, the National League or League Two. Mm-hmm. But that you think of the amount of kids out there that would love to be professional soccer players. Yeah. So there's still an element of success within that anyway.
Coach, I have a question for you. So transitioning from player to coach and coming over to America, what was that transition like in terms of just, taking that step? And of course you were confident, but what gave you that confidence, I guess, to move over here as well?
Yeah, it was an interesting one because, look, at the time, that was 2012, I moved over. Mm-hmm. Look, the game now in the States, it has grown leaps and bounds from what it was 8 years ago when I first came. Mm-hmm. So when I first came, it was a little bit of an eye opener, to be completely honest with you. It was different to what I was used to. Mm-hmm. In the USL at the time, the season was really short. The regular season only ran from, I want to say it was like the end of March through September. I think the final, the championship final was in September. So it was a really short season, which obviously I wasn't used to. In England, you go, obviously it's on a different part of the year, but in England, you're in pre-season at the beginning of July, and then you're finishing at the end of May. So the length of the season was different. Then the travel was probably the biggest thing for me. My first game for Orlando, first competitive game, we were away at Charlotte, and we got given an itinerary or like a schedule of the travel on the Wednesday. Mm-hmm. The game was on the Saturday, and on the schedule it says bus departure at 10 p.m. Thursday night, and I'm thinking there's no way we're taking a bus. This bus must be taking us to the airport, and then we get on the plane and fly. Yeah. And then obviously after conversing and chatting to the other guys, they were like, no, we're actually going to get on the bus. It's a sleeper bus. And I thought it was a joke. I didn't believe him. So this bus turns up, and I'm like, there is no way on God's earth that there's like 20 buses on this bed. Lo and behold, you get on, and there's these bunk beds, and we slept through the night, and we arrived in Charlotte on the Friday morning. We went and stopped at a local breakfast place for breakfast. We trained, we got to the hotel, and then we stayed in the hotel Friday, played Saturday, and then drove back through the night straight after the game. But even the game, it was at a high school stadium. There was probably 50 people there on a really beaten down old turf field. And I remember at the start of the game thinking, what have I done? Like, I've just left England to come. This is not the American dream that I got sold. Thankfully, it got better. And obviously at the time, Orlando was probably one of the biggest and the best teams in the USL. So home games, we were drawing close to 10,000 in a really nice stadium. And some of the road trips were tough. Some of the away games were difficult challenges. But I was fortunate because I think I got out here at the right time, just as it was really starting to boom. And you look at the USL now. I mean, it's incredible how much it's grown, and everybody at the league, Jake Edwards and his team, deserve so much credit for how that's grown. And then obviously Orlando, I was fortunate enough to be part of that club as it transitioned into an MLS club. And I knew, and that was, to be honest, that was part of the reason why I went to Orlando, was because I knew that it was a club that had big plans to expand into the MLS at some point. And I was fortunate to be at a club in its infancy where there were going to be opportunities moving forward with the club. And obviously then I transitioned onto the coaching team. But yeah, the first few months were a challenge, but the people at the club, people at Orlando at the time were fantastic people, and they really made me and my wife feel welcome, and we enjoyed 6 fantastic years there.
Do you have anything you can, I guess, pass on to our young players in terms of just when you do move to a new environment, some of the things they should, take on, or some of the things they should do to help them adapt?
Yeah, I think you have to be really open. You have to understand that you may have to adapt a little bit. It's not a case of the other players or the coaches adapting to you, and it's you adapting to the environment that you're in, and being open-minded and not making any knee-jerk reactions. And it would have been easy for me after that first couple of weeks to go, this I'm not doing this, I'm going back to England. But I thought, you know what, let's stay the course. Let's see how the first year goes, and after once the first 2 or 3 months were out of the way, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. The lifestyle and the level of football was a lot better than maybe what I thought it was going to be, and people still now, I don't think, respect the level of soccer out here in the USL and the MLS. And so yeah, the biggest piece of advice for me changing environments is just be open, give it time, but understand that you're going into an environment and a culture that may be a little bit different to what you've been in before, and it's down to you to try and adapt to that.
You spoke a bit about how the football has developed in your, I guess, 8 years of being here. Since 2012, in terms of working with young players and things like that, has there been a progressive, I guess, development in that aspect of football in America?
Yeah, I think I've always said in the States, I believe that the players physically and technically are very, very good. I've always found, and maybe it's due to the collegiate system, that tactically they're a little bit behind some of the level in Europe. I think if you look at the structure of how things are in Europe compared to America, up to 16, there's probably not a lot of difference. Top players in Europe, age 15, 16, compare them to top players in the States, 15, 16, there's probably not a lot of difference. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, that 6 years, from 16 to 22, the course and the direction of their career, for the most part, is completely different. So you're getting players in Europe then that are going into, like I was fortunate enough to do, you're going into a full-time professional environment where you're training every day, your nutrition is taken care of, you've got video analysis, everything's taken. Although you might not be on a full professional contract at 16, you're in a professional environment training to do that. Then you compare that to an American boy at 16. He's still got another 2 years in high school. Then he graduates high school. Then he goes to college for 4 years, where he's only allowed to train a certain amount of time. He's only allowed to play in a certain amount of games because of the rules and the restrictions. So you then get to 22, when the majority of players in the States are getting drafted into a professional club. Players in Europe at 22 aren't considered young players. Young players in Europe are 17, 18. So then, but then you compare that to American kids, it's completely different. So for me, you look at that 6 years between age 16 and 22 and how different the environments are that they're in. It probably explains why we're a little bit behind. And obviously, there are exceptions. Look, there seems to be more players now that maybe are leaving to go to Europe at a younger age, or they're declining college offers because they want to go and sign a professional contract at 17, 18, homegrown players. But there's still a large majority of players that are going to the collegiate system. And I'm not saying it's bad, because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's the culture here in North America. I've got 2 young children. I'm going to want them to have the best education they possibly can. So I understand it from a parental standpoint. They want their kids to go to college, to get a degree, to put them in a good position to go and get a good job in life. But from a football standpoint, it's just not the same.
So do you think, if you're, a North American kid and, you've been growing up in the ranks of, the collegiate system or even an academy system, and you hit the age of, 21, 22, do you think it's a bit too late to make that transition over to overseas in Europe? Or do you think there's still that potential ability to play at that level and, make a career out of it?
No, I still think it's possible.
Yeah.
I think there's examples. I mean, look, you look at somebody like Aaron Long, all right, at New York Red Bulls. He's a great example. I've used this example with a few of the players I've coached before. He got drafted. I think it was it Portland he got drafted to? Played for Portland Timbers 2, got released. Went to Seattle Sounders 2, got released. Signed for New York Red Bulls 2, third year of his professional career. Ends up doing really well, gets an MLS contract. Now he's a regular in the New York Red Bulls lineup, a regular with the men's national team, has been linked with a few moves out to the English Premier League. He's 28, 29, I think. So it's never too late. And there are players out. Look, I'm not saying that if you go to college you can kiss goodbye to your European dream. That's not the case at all. I think Andrew Gutman, who went to Indiana, ended up signing a contract with Celtic. I know he came back to the States in a couple of loan moves last year with Charlotte and Cincinnati, I think. But it's certainly not. It certainly doesn't mean the door's closed. I just think that from a developmental standpoint, it would be better for these younger players to be in a full-time professional environment from those younger ages, around 15, 16.
Now, Coach, you're transitioning now to an MLS team. And so a question for you then is, having worked with USL players and having worked with MLS players, what do you think the gap is? Does it exist? And how can guys playing in the USL potentially put themselves in a position to be in MLS?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a big talking point. It's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about, because to be completely honest, there's a lot of players out there in the USL that could probably be on an MLS roster. I'm not saying they would be in and they would start every game, but I think something that frustrates me a little bit, and I think, look, at the end of the day, there's obviously rules and restrictions in place, but MLS teams will draft a player out of college and pay him X amount of dollars per year with zero experience. You've then got a number of players that have probably played for 2-3 years in the USL that are, in my opinion, better than the players that are coming out of college, and they're getting overlooked. And they would be of better value to MLS clubs than what the rookie players would be. Because if you needed those guys for, let's say, 15 games a year, they've got that 2, 3, sometimes 4 years of experience of playing 34 games a year at a good level, as opposed to a rookie, with the greatest respect, of playing in what, a 3-4 month season. So that frustrates me a little bit, that certain guys in the USL haven't been given those opportunities. And look, the level is obviously better in MLS. I think the gap isn't as big as what I thought it might have been. Obviously, I was at Orlando for a number of years, and I coached the USL team for 2 years. So there were players coming back and forth between the MLS group into our USL teams. So I was fortunate enough to see that close hand now. Now I'm full-time on an MLS staff, and I'm around the MLS group on a daily basis. The level's better. I'm not gonna make any bones about that. But it's certainly not. There are certainly players out there in the USL that, if given an opportunity, could easily be part of an MLS roster and contribute towards the team.
Well, so then, what do you think are the catalysts in order for those USL players, in order to get that opportunity to, get that potential MLS trial or contract even?
It's a difficult one, I think. And look, I'm purely speculating.
Yeah.
But I think maybe there's clubs out there that don't give USL the respect that it deserves.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to this question, but how many MLS clubs actively scout USL? Now, there are a number of teams that have second teams. So I can speak from experience. When I was at Orlando, players that we came up against in the USL would always make a recommendation. There's a player at Club X, Club Y, keep tabs on him because he did really well against us. He might be one for us to look at in the future. So I'm sure that happens. But if you look at statistics over the course of the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years, how many players have been signed from USL to MLS? It's not many.
No.
You compare that to other countries around the world, it's actually pretty embarrassing. Because you in England, Germany, Spain, Italy, the movement of players from the lower leagues up to the the top leagues, it's a decent number.
Yeah.
And I think it's a, in my opinion, would be a good market to look at. And look, I'm not saying you fill your squad with 15 USL guys. I'm saying I think there's a handful out there that could certainly contribute over the course of a season.
Now, Coach, in terms of MLS players, especially for young players coming into the league, what are some of the characteristics, some of the defining markers that you guys look for when you decide if a player would be ready or good enough to play at your club?
I think, look, from my personal standpoint, when I'm watching games and watching players, there's a few things that you look at, right? You're looking at, can they do the basics technically well? What are their receiving skills like? What are their passing skills like? Do they pass the ball crisply? Is there a feel to their passing? Is their first touch good? What's their awareness like? I think those are the first things I look at. Is I say it to the players a lot: be brilliant at doing the basics. That there's so many because of social media and the way technology's developed now. There's so many things at hand for us as coaching, as players to look at. I sometimes think the basics get overlooked a little, but I think sometimes we try and run before we can walk with certain aspects. So I think for me, I try and strip it all down and look at what are their, can they do the technical things or the basics of the technical part of the game? Can they do that well? Then you're looking at the physical capabilities, right? At what's their pace like? What's their speed like? Have they got decent size? Then it comes down to the positional attributes. So personally, there's a number of attributes that I would want from a right back, from a left back. Then certain attributes that I would want from a centre back, central midfield players, attacking midfield players, wingers, forwards. So, like I said, the basic components are what are the technical qualities like, what are the physical qualities like. Then you're looking a little bit more specifically at attributes for that position. Then if all those things align and I like what I'm seeing, then you'll start to watch more games. So rather than just watch, I mean, personally, when I was a head coach, I'd try and watch a minimum of seven to 9 full games of the player that we would want to sign, but all different types of games. So games maybe at home, games, what's the difference with the player when they play on the road and they've lost 4-0 as opposed to playing at home and winning 3-0. So all different types of games on the road, at home, winning, losing, drawing, maybe in a different position. So try and really go through deep. And then probably one of the biggest parts of it for me then are the character attributes. Yeah. So I would try and get at least 3 references. So coaches that they've played for in the past, players that maybe they've played alongside. And I've been fortunate now, obviously being in the States for 8 years, I've been able to build up a decent network of people around the country that I can call upon and trust their opinion. So what are they like off the field? How do they handle adversity? What's their work ethic like? What are their training habits like? What are their standards like regarding their approach to training and the preparation? And do they want to learn? Have they got a growth mindset? Are they hungry to improve and to kind of progress their career? Then I'll try and have a couple of FaceTime calls, or if I'm fortunate enough to meet up with the player face to face, if it's close enough, then I'll do that. So there's a number of kind of steps that I try and take. And as I said, the character piece is huge for me, because I think when you're trying to build a culture within a club, good people are paramount to that. And if you've got 1 or 2 bad apples, so to speak, when the going gets tough, it can have a negative influence, and it's not something that I want.
I think that's some great insight on your vetting process, in the sense that, like, how long do you think before you make a decision on a player it would take you before, bringing them onto the team?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there's a number of factors that go into that. I think, look, as a coach, you're always watching games, right? So when we're scouting opponents, you're looking at the next opponent, but then you're also so the tendencies of that team tactically as a whole, but then different lines, different units, but then individuals. So for me, I've got an ongoing database of players within the USL and within the MLS and with the collegiate system and the DA, players that I've seen in the past. I'm like, yeah, I like him. So you make a note, and then you kind of keep tabs on him. And then it comes to a stage where, and look, 9 times out of 10, the recruitment, especially at USL level, was happening in the off season. So the off season comes around, what holes you've got to fill. right, where was that left back I remember there was a left back we saw somewhere, right, let's go and have a look at him more in depth now. Yeah, like him, let's try and find out who the agent is. Or you get an email from an agent, you get a phone call, right, we've got these players that are available, they're out of contract, what do you think? Right, let's go and have a look at our notes. Did we like him? Did we not? Yes, let's take it further. Let's look a bit further. No, sorry, not for us. Move on. So it's difficult to give you a clear kind of concise answer because there's so many different factors involved in that. In the MLS, it's a little bit different. You probably see a little bit more player movement during the season as what you probably would in the USL. But for me, it's always an ongoing process. I mean, there were players that I signed at St. Louis that I liked for probably 3, 4, 5 years previously that I never really got the opportunity to sign before. But I knew I'd seen them 4 or 5 years ago and liked them and kept tabs on them. And then all of a sudden, an opportunity presents itself. Yeah, bam! I know I've watched him enough. I don't need to watch him anymore. Make a couple of calls, find out what he's like as a guy, FaceTime call, kind of ask a few questions to get a feel for him. Yeah, brilliant. I've seen enough, heard enough. Let's pull the trigger, so to speak.
Coach, you spoke a bit, just so we can touch on quickly, you spoke a bit about culture and a player's character. My question for you is personally, how much does a player's demeanor on the pitch, affect your desire to either have him on the field or to bring him into your club?
A lot. I think you can tell a lot about a player's character by the way they are on the field, how they hold themselves, what's their body language like. And again, not to kind of repeat myself, but how do they react to things that maybe don't go their way? Maybe they're in good positions and they're not getting the ball. Are they throwing their arms in the air and kind of going in a strop and then not pressing in the next transition moment? Or are they kind of a next play mentality, which is something I've always liked to preach? Are they aggressive? Are they a front foot player? Are they somebody that always wants the ball? Are they always trying to do the right thing? So I think you can certainly tell a lot. Look, I think in an ideal world, we would always like to watch players live, because I think when you can actually be in a stadium and watch a player live, you can tell so much more about them, because the ball might be in a different part of the field, but you're zoning in and you're looking at that player in particular. For example, if we're watching a centre back and he's on a team that's attacking, what's his positioning like whilst his team is attacking? Is he already thinking about that next transition moment so his team doesn't get counter-attacked? Sometimes on video, you can't see those things. So it's a little bit trickier. So I think to answer your question, yes, demeanor, body language, reactions, aggression, what's their attitude and their mentality look like when they're playing on the field.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, thank you. So I guess we'll transition to now your role at Inter Miami. Sorry, coming into this new season with a brand new crop of players. I saw an interview. You said that you don't have too much expectations, or that you shouldn't have such high expectations. What are your personal expectations for what you guys can do if we potentially get back to football this year?
Yeah, I think personally, it was a difficult decision to leave St. Louis and join Inter Miami. Obviously, I was in a privileged position as a head coach at a young age, but I felt like it was an opportunity to grow as a coach and as a person and learn under Diego Alonso, who's a fantastic coach and has had an enormous amount of success in Mexico and has won CONCACAF Champions League twice. So the opportunity to work on the staff with him and the other coaches that he brought in was something I felt like would really help improve me and allow me to maybe add certain aspects to my repertoire that maybe I didn't have before. And I've been around English coaches, I've been around American coaches, never really experienced the South American coach. So to learn some of the nuances and to add that to my repertoire was obviously was attractive to me. And then from the team side of it, I think, look, expansion is difficult. I don't think people understand how tough it is when you're starting something from scratch. You've got a completely new group of players, a completely new group of staff. We've moved into a new training ground. Everything's new, everything's different. when we talk about culture, like culture takes time. You can't just set a culture in place and think it's going to be there overnight. It takes time. And I think what we've seen is you have to be patient, and you have to trust the process. And I think when you've got so many players that have come in from different backgrounds as well. I mean, there's a decent number of players that have come from within the league, but then we've got a number of players that have come from South America as well, and number of guys that don't speak English, number of guys that don't speak Spanish, and so there's a lot of translating going on to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And I think it will take time. Look, we're obviously really ambitious. I think we've seen that. We're fortunate with the ownership group that we've got, and with the leadership team under Paul McDonough. It's everything's there for it to be successful. At the moment, the short-term goal obviously is to actually, hopefully we can get back training and get back to competing soon, and then we'll have to see. But it's obviously a difficult period, and it's certainly not ideal. As a new team, we were kind of just getting going, and then this happens, and then you almost have to back to square one again, so to speak. But I think like a lot of teams, we've been trying to make the best of the situation, and a number of Zoom calls per week with the team, and to go through style of play and expectations in certain moments of the game. So I certainly think when we do get back, the players will be clear on exactly what we want to accomplish regarding the playing style and an identity. And then now it's a case of obviously, hopefully we get back on the training ground and we can put it into place a little bit.
Yeah. Also, being a USL head coach and making that transition now, being to an assistant coach at Inter Miami, what are the different like manageable roles that now you're experiencing now? From being a head coach to an assistant coach, or what are the different things that you need to be doing?
Yeah, so my role now is obviously more of a supporting role. I've obviously had 4 years as a head coach where I've been making decisions on everything, and there's a lot that comes across your desk every day. Now as an assistant, there's certainly a lot less regarding decision makings. It's a lot more of giving opinions, asking questions, being there to support. And what I've tried to do, and I think Diego respects it, is because I've been in his shoes. I know what it's like being the man, being the head coach, and having that pressure on your shoulders every week. So I think I can help and add a different dimension, because I've been there, albeit at a young age, and still got an awful lot of learning to do. But it's certainly not as pressurized, and you certainly don't feel like you haven't got enough time to do everything. There's certainly more time, but the role and the dynamic has changed, which I knew it would. And it took a little bit of adjusting, but I think it's been okay so far.
Now, Coach, I got to ask, have you picked up a little Spanish?
A little bit. Yeah, my plan coming in was to get a tutor and to take lessons 2 or 3 days a week.
Wonderful.
But then we were on the road for 6 weeks of pre-season. Then we start the season, and then obviously the coronavirus hit. So a lot of it for me has just been on Duolingo, to be honest. But I'll be honest, we joke, that was one of that was part of the reason why I decided to come, because I thought, I'm almost going to get forced to learn Spanish. And I think going forward, it's going to help me if I can speak another language, especially in MLS, where there's so many Spanish speaking players. So hopefully we can get through this crisis, and I can get a tutor and get 2 or 3 lessons a week and be close to fluent as soon as possible. But I'm picking things up every day.
Coach, you're in Miami. It won't be hard to find a tutor, I can imagine. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, we got to ask, just for all of our young players, what's it like working with Bex? And is he still curling in free kicks on his spare time?
We don't see too much of him. We've seen him a handful of times, and every time he's been around, he's been really, really friendly, really humble.
Yeah.
He hasn't joined in training.
Not yet.
You can see him. He's been on the side, and he's kind of struck a few balls in, and you can tell he's still got it. He certainly hasn't lost it.
Yeah.
I'm sure a few of the guys were hoping he might join in a few sessions, so we'll have to see. But yeah, every interaction we've had with him so far has been fantastic. his demeanor and as I said, how friendly and humble he is, has been great to see.
I guess one of the last questions before we let you go. The club, like you said, the club has a ton of ambition, and we're all seeing the park that's being built and everything. It's going to be a real football club. How excited are you to be a part of the growth of this club as it's going right now?
Yeah, I feel very privileged, very blessed to be a part of it. As I said, when I got the call in the off season, it was a difficult decision because I really enjoyed my time at St. Louis, and being a head coach is a privileged spot to be in. I think it's something that I probably want to do again in the future at some point. Mm-hmm. So I know how many coaches out there are kind of desperate to be a head coach. So to give that up was difficult. But as I said, when you look at the plans and everything that's in place here at Inter Miami, I mean, the training facility is absolutely incredible. I mean, it's up there with the top facilities in the world. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to see some of the top clubs in England, the facilities they've got, and we're certainly up there. So that to go in there as a working environment every day is fantastic. Obviously, the stadium that's in place is great. Ownership group, coaching staff, players. As I said, I'm really, really fortunate to be a part of a fantastic club, and hopefully we can go on and have a real good amount of success.
Perfect. So, Coach, we usually like to end it. We like to have a little question and answer period, and put our guys on the spot. So, first question I have for you: which striker would you prefer, Peter Crouch or Jonathan Walters?
Oh, it's a difficult one. It depends what type of football you want to play. Yeah. I would probably say Peter Crouch. I think he's massively underrated because he was big. People didn't realize how good technically he was. He scored all different types of goals. So tough one, because I know Jonathan Walters was a fantastic player at Stoke, but I'd probably go with Crouch.
Godwin's a Liverpool fan, so he's all about his Crouch.
Okay.
I'm going to ask the next question leading into that.
Go on then.
As a Liverpool fan, which of the three midfielders would you pick? Frank Lampard, Paul Scholes, or Steven Gerrard?
Scholes all day long for me. Absolute top play. He his vision, his passing awareness was absolutely incredible. I think there was a quote once from either Xavi or Iniesta saying that he was the best midfielder they'd ever played against. Yeah. And that tells you everything. So sharp. He was 2 or 3 steps ahead of everybody. Wasn't the quickest, wasn't the biggest, but my goodness, what a fantastic footballer. His awareness and his passing ability was incredible.
So your answer leads into our next question then. Xavi versus Iniesta.
Oof.
Build your team.
Put me on the spot, yeah. Can I have both of them?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
If you had to put me on the spot, I'd probably say Xavi. I mean, I was more, as a player, I was more of a 6, and I think he's more of a 6 as well. So I think I can relate to him a little bit more. Again, he made the game look so easy. His awareness, his first touch, the quality of his passing, how he was able to break lines so cleanly and efficiently, and I don't think he ever gave the ball away in his life. Probably was incredible player.
That's awesome. So second last one, Guardiola as man managers, Guardiola or Sir Alex?
Sir Alex. Well, I think he's got to go down as one of the greatest of all time. Look, Pep's obviously been extremely successful, but for Ferguson to do it at one club over such a long period of time, and to change the dynamic of the squad, the amount of times he did and still get success was unreal. Like I said, I've got so much respect for Pep and the jobs that he's done at Barcelona and Bayern and now Manchester City. But for Ferguson to do it for so long at one club and go through the changes that they went through, I don't think we'll see many more like him.
All right, Coach, and the very last one. We know you were born in Bristol, so Bristol City or versus Bristol Rovers?
Bristol Rovers. That was the team that that was my dad's first team.
Wonderful.
And I had a short loan spell there, so I would have to say Bristol Rovers.
Go Rovers then.
Awesome, Coach. I appreciate you taking the time to be on this OPSM podcast, and hopefully once everything gets back and running, we wish you the best in the season.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your time, Coach.
Yeah, no worries.